Thank you. I do want to take a moment here to also thank Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, who could not join us today. She was planning on being here, but someone at some place called the White House called, and she was asked to attend an Emmett Till proclamation, and her flight returning is delayed. So unfortunately, Lieutenant Governor could not join us, but we have a wonderful panel here today. So let's begin as we talk about investing in women's sports. Now, the last year in particular, we've seen a huge growth in women's sports viewership: basketball, softball, soccer. We're also seeing a large uptick in companies that are investing in women's sports. So let's begin with Holly. Tell us why Horizon Therapeutics has gotten on board. What does the landscape of investing in women's sports look like? And what is it that a corporation wants to get out of it?
Sure. Well, thank you for that question, and thanks for having me here today. At Horizon Therapeutics, we have a couple of pillars of giving, one of which is STEAM. And the intention with that pillar is to really invest in programs that are going to develop our future diverse STEAM leaders. And in defining what sort of skills are necessary for a future leader, we recognize that sport has a lot to offer when it comes to developing leadership skills. And so in looking for partnerships, what's important to us is to find multiple areas where there's overlap and alignment and authenticity and how we want to show up in the world. And so for us, partnerships like the Sky make so much sense because not only are they providing representation to a whole host of young girls who have dreams and aspirations of being leaders both on the court and off the court, but they also create opportunities for companies like ours to share that message with our future diverse STEAM leaders, that when you think about a career in STEAM, it's not just in a lab coat, right? Like there are lots of opportunities across the spectrum that involves STEM skills. So within sport itself, there's all kinds of data analytics, review, the physics of ball trajectory, and you name it. So for young aspiring leaders, they can think about this STEM career in a multitude of ways. So that's what's really exciting to us, to be able to partner with organizations like the Sky.
Natasha, at Grupo Bimbo, you also are interested in women's sports, but as a former athlete yourself, you've seen how it's changed and how companies have also changed the way they view women's sports and getting involved in them. Tell us from your perspective as an athlete how you've seen it change.
Yeah, so corporations, to be relevant with consumers today, have to have an agenda that includes all. Right, so a diversity, equity, and belonging agenda has to make sure that it's driving activities and projects to bring everybody along with them. I think what's important for players and corporations is how do we find the right fit of players and corporations where there's an alignment of the culture so that these athletes can really showcase the brand that is sponsoring them as well. Corporations can be proud of sponsoring world-class athletic talent. So I would expect that we'll see more and more of that, and I think we'll get into the questions further, Peggy, but corporations have such an important role here in terms of driving more equity in women's sports.
One of the things that Natasha and I were just talking about before we began was the difference overseas and here in the United States and why companies here in the States are so slow to catching on. So, Rebekah, since you are our world traveler and you have played in, I was trying to keep track, Israel, Turkey, Romania, Spain.
Yes.
What have you seen the difference between companies overseas getting behind women's sports and those here in the States?
There's a big difference, you know. So I was just in Spain for a couple of years, and the local community, I'd say like the local restaurants, the local politicians, they're all fully invested. And I think part of the reason that is because there's more accessibility. So I play in EuroLeague and EuroCup, and you can easily watch those games, you know. So there's just a link on YouTube, you click and it's there and it's live. And so many times I have people telling me like, I want to watch your game, but I don't have a subscription to Amazon Prime, you know. So I think the league is making strides, and you know, there's a new media deal coming up, and I just think if we take a fraction of the commitment that like the local teams and overseas do for their teams, like our market is so much bigger, so there's so much more possibility. So if we do a fraction of that, the sky's the limit. Literally.
Natasha, so how do we do that, though? How do you get those eyeballs on the sport here in the States?
So I think there's a lot of good best practices from places like Europe, Rebekah. They have, as you said, access. There's tons of viewership. Soccer is not just a sport for men anymore. It's for women as well. And they're very visible everywhere they go. So how do we bring social media as well? That is universal in terms of its presence. And it's not so hard to access as, TV and programming. So I think in the U.S., how do we look at what's going well around the world and how other sports and markets have gotten that support, and how do we bring it into this market, considering our fan base? I think the other thing with corporations is how in a city like Chicago can we proactively go to Fortune 500 companies and say, this is important for your diversity agenda. Sponsoring female sports and these top female athletes, this is going to resonate with the consumers that are buying your products. So it's a combination. Make it more global. And I would say one third thing, and Michael, you might have a perspective on this, is can we take a game or a portion of the WNBA over to other parts of the world? Is there something to be played with there? So not everything's just on the season that we have or just in the U.S. Can we further globalize the game by trying some different things that maybe other sports have?
Michael Alter here, owner of the Chicago Sky. Do you want to comment on that, if you can, about whether or not are there any talks within the WNBA of going more global?
You can answer this preseason game.
Oh yeah, our preseason game, we had a game in Canada, and it's a
First.
yeah, but it's a step in the right direction for sure. And I think taking those baby steps will lead to getting the more global market, but also playing overseas. For example, like women's sports, you can say soccer, basketball. Everyone's goal is to play in our league. So I feel like it's there. We just need to give them like an avenue, like where they can get the gear, things like that, and because it's there, So go ahead, Michael.
So yes, we did play our first international preseason game. It was 20,000 people. Was sold out, which is fantastic, especially for a preseason game. We are, as a league, looking at extending that either with future preseason games, maybe in Europe, or in the Middle East we looked at, or possibly even a regular season game. We can figure out the logistics and how to do it. So there is that, and then there is more. Both from the streaming side, which games that a lot of people in Europe do watch through streaming, they do usually have to pay for it. That's true, but there are some countries that the league does have rights deals with, which is on broadcast, and through. So those efforts are definitely there. I mean, the NBA, as you probably know, is a huge global presence, and so we have a good sort of model to follow, and we're just in the early stages of doing that.
Natasha brought up an interesting point as a former player and the number of women now who are in the boardrooms. It starts at the top, and it starts with those leaders making sure they get behind women's sports. So maybe, Holly, if you can comment on the leadership that it takes from women who already have a seat at the table, actually getting behind and supporting women's sports.
Absolutely. So we have this saying where you need to lead from the table that you sit at. And so if you kind of zoom out and you think about the structures of society and who those structures were built by and who they were built to benefit, you recognize that there needs to be an injection of new perspectives into what the future is going to look like. Like, how do you build that future, understanding what influenced what we have today? And so it's really important to our team at Horizon and the partners that we engage with that when we think about diverse perspectives and the value that creates to having an outcome that benefits everyone, you need to have different perspectives represented in rooms where decisions are being made, and that those representatives have an opportunity to express their perspective in an authentic, non-judgmental way. So across our portfolio, we do a lot of investments in creating opportunities for women to join boards and women to get the experience that they need to be presented in a way where they're attractive to startups and other entities. But I think individually what we can do, not just from a corporate perspective, is think about what table you're sitting at and how can you create space for others to join that table.
It sounds like, Natasha, that Holly is saying it's almost a social responsibility for gender equity. As women, we owe it to other women that are behind us. Talk about the gender equity and what our social responsibility is.
It is. The more women we have at the table, not only do we bring ourselves along as a gender, but we bring along so many other channels of diversity. And so if we can use gender to get the topic down the road even further, then we can bring everything else that encompasses, we call it in our organization, diversity, equity, and belonging. I was just looking at the season schedule in the last week or so, knowing this was coming along, and I asked myself, well, why don't I have season tickets? Why am I not at these games more often? And so I went online, and there's different packages. And so we need to show up, and we need to go into our pockets as well. We need to make sure that women know we are giving our time and our mentorship, but also that we're supporting the game actively. So I work for a company that's headquartered in Mexico City, and I was saying too earlier that we just sponsored a soccer team in Spain, and that's one nice step. But I have so many other ideas that I want to bring to our CEO, and it's like, when do you bring them, and how do you bring them? I've even had athletes. My daughter plays at in a Big Ten school in the NCAA, and I have her teammates coming to me who are Mexican saying, "Hey, how do I talk to you? How do I understand what the sponsorship opportunities are?" I was so thrilled that she asked me that. So thrilled that somebody gave her the tool or the voice to approach somebody like me and say, I want part of this. So it's a two-way street. But back to what you're both saying is, we need to create the bridges, the comfort, the ability for women to find their voice, to be asking questions, and then we absolutely have the responsibility every single day to be finding ways to support both with our time and with our pocketbook.
There's another part of investing in women's sports that, Rebekah, I would like you to address, and that's the other parts of investment that women's sports don't have that the men have when it comes to your facilities, the staff. Talk about the things that you would like to see invested in women's sports that the men have.
Well, I would just say, people always want investors, and you think about monetarily wise, but as you mentioned, it's kind of like a communication thing. So it would be great if investors, sponsors, have open line of communication with the players so that they are aware of, the different things that we may need, and then it's a two-way street. Also investors, they need to get something out of it as well. So again, just communicating a two-way street, and I do think that we're on the way there. I don't know if a lot of you guys, it's probably not good to say because we're playing Vegas, but everyone sees the new facility Vegas has, and that's just something, all teams should have and stuff like that. So I would just say that we're on the way there and we're taking steps there. But having the open line of communication is definitely the way to go and way to get there. They say it takes a village. So we just all have to work together and find meet a common goal and get to the goals that we need to get to.
There's been a very interesting development since name, image, and likeness hit college sports in the last couple of years. Female athletes are seeing tremendous growth in being sponsored for NIL money, and it is because of their presence on social media. You have a blog online, you are in social media. What do you see as the opportunities that you have, and what role can the athletes themselves play in attracting investors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say, first of all, building your personal brand and people getting to know you will get the interest and the attraction from the outside. And the first step, us as athletes, we need to like know ourselves, know what we like to do. Like for example, as you guys know, I played overseas a long time, so I did come up with a blog, and I figured out I like writing, and just by starting that, there was so much interest, and I had no idea how many people would be interested in that. And so things like that, where we can get people interested, will help grow everything as far as getting. Sorry. It will just help get the visibility, as I said, visibility for sponsors and things like that. And social media is the same thing. It's like people want to relate to us. So as we get people to relate to us, they become more interested. And so that's very important. So we as the athletes, of course, need to do our part as well.
I know everyone here is a Sky fan, but for maybe some of our younger girls in the audience, so in case you don't know Rebekah's story, she was a 31-year-old rookie in the WNBA. 31 years old. She never gave up until she finally got her chance at 31 years old. So that is a story of perseverance, but I do want to talk a little bit more about building the brand. And if you two can talk about from your companies, what do you need to see from the athletes in order to maybe get behind them personally?
So I just love hearing a player like you speak, Rebekah, because it's like, I wouldn't want to be on the court with you, but I'm really glad to hear you talk. So nice. And I've looked at your social media profile a bit, and I feel so happy with all the activities that you conduct. And I think there tends to be a characteristic, if I may, for female athletes where they're deeply involved in their community, and you just don't typically hear maybe, stories that you wouldn't want to hear about female professional athletes. They excel, they're at the highest levels of their sport and their game, and then they do all sorts of wonderful things in life as well. And so I think, Peggy, that, corporations are looking for that model, right? Not just to sponsor their brand and to be connected with athletics, but they want something that's wholesome, that is totally aligned and culturally reflected in all that their company stands for. And so making those connections, it's a two-way street. But the more that players can identify with, what do I stand for? What's my brand? And how do I align with a corporation that stands for what I believe in, and vice versa? I think we're going to see a lot more partnerships.
You want to add anything on building a personal brand?
Yeah, I'll just add to your comments. At Horizon, so we're a global biotechnology company, and we treat rare and rheumatic diseases. So these are very small patient populations, oftentimes with diseases where there's no treatment that exists, and really debilitating life experiences as a result of that. And so some of the folks that we've reached out to as partners might be an athlete who has some sort of personal connection to that disease, a child, a family member, maybe themselves. And so beyond the personal brand alignment from a values perspective, there's also potential opportunity to think about what's the product that this entity is providing to the world, and is there some sort of potential overlap with my life and what's authentic to me.
Rebekah, I'm wondering, how did you feel? We talked about women investing in women, Cubs owner Laura Ricketts becoming a minority owner, and now to hear that Dwayne Wade, NBA superstar Hall of Famer, is also going to become an investor as well. How does it make the athletes feel when the male athletes and male-dominated companies also invest in what you guys are doing?
Well, it feels great. And it's nice to see, I think Dwayne Wade actually mentioned this, like people talk about it, but it's nice to see like actions. And a lot of males know how talented women athletes are. So I'm ecstatic, and I'm glad, because I feel like he's setting a standard and setting an example, and I feel like we're going to see a lot more of that. And I'm looking forward to all the great things. Like, as Michael said, the NBA already has a great model, so he can definitely bring that over to the WNBA side, and hopefully now Chicago Sky will be a model for the other teams in the league.
Natasha, what can the WNBA do differently in Chicago? It is such a competitive market. but it's also the third largest market in the country. But when it comes to sports, it's awfully competitive for the money, for the media attention. What would you like to see the WNBA do differently?
I think there are just a handful of companies, without mentioning them, that could really help us get on the board even further than we are. And again, I don't know, maybe there's activities going on, but we do have the Chicago Bulls and the NBA, and is there something there? Maybe we've already played a few games at the United Center, I'm not sure. But is there a way to piggyback off some of the things that the NBA does that would get us some more notoriety? But I would definitely target corporations. I mean, in our own backyard here, this is a sports town, and it's a women's town too. So let's put the two together and just understand what corporations are looking for and try to drive further partnerships. I think the other thing, Peggy, is a member of the Chicago network. We have over 500 members in our network, and we care deeply about bringing as many women along with us as possible. So how does the WNBA partner with us even further to find out, along with, going to a major company? All of us have our individual networks, and all of us are very passionate about our particular interests. So how do we leverage that affiliation that, even further, so we're all working at it every single day?
Holly, can you address maybe what the barriers are for companies here in Chicago that may already put their money towards other professional sports teams here in the city?
So Horizon could be a great use case for that, because we actually are partners with the Bulls and the Cubs. And for us, the partnership with the Sky was an extension of a commitment that we have as a company to really promote this diverse pipeline. And so I think building a bridge or a connective point with companies who have made a public statement that they care about DE&I work, and saying it's one thing to sort of share those words on your social media platforms and get the likes and the support from your consumers that you're seeking. It's something different to really put your money where your mouth is and invest in partnerships like this, or invest in pay equity, which, by the way, is the easiest way for a company to promote equity. Make sure you're paying your women and people of color equally for equal work, which is something we stand by. But those are the ways that you can really catalyze change, right? Like, think about what assets you have to bear and bring them to the table and spend them in ways that reflect your values.
Thank you. I do want to open it up to questions, so please feel free to ask any questions. And while you think of your really smart questions, I want to throw something out about when we hear someone, people say, if you see it, you can be it. And I know that Rebekah understands this. The only reason I am a sportscaster is because when I was in college, my brothers were watching this new channel called ESPN. And I had no idea what it was, and they were all watching it in their apartment. And I looked and I said, is that a woman talking sports? And they said, yeah, it's this new channel called ESPN. And I knew it then and there. I said, that's what I'm going to do. Because I'd never seen it before. I'd never seen a woman doing sports. Your mother saw the WNBA when you were like 3 years old. And she put you and your sister in basketball. Is that true?
Yes.
How important is it, if you could just see it, so many girls can then dream to be it?
Yeah, so I was 8. I'm not that old.
I'm making
I'm
the
just
story
kidding.
really good. You were 3.
Yeah.
You were
No,
a prodigy.
I'm just kidding.
You were a prodigy.
Yeah, I was a baby. But yeah, I remember actually the WNBA had just came out. It was the first year, and my mom was like, okay, actually, it was me first because I was a little older than my sister. And I remember my first tryout, I shot at the wrong basket. But yeah, I loved it. But I also remember going to the LA Sparks games, watching Lisa Leslie, and I remember I got her autograph, and it was just like, okay, I want to do this, and even the opportunity of me being a part of Chicago Sky and in the WNBA after 10 years, the best part was really just like people coming up to me and saying, like, I'm going to keep working hard, like the other overseas players saying that they're going to keep going because they got hope from what happened with me. So that's honestly the best part, and I definitely like I hold that special because also, like I said, when I was young, I remember Lisa Leslie signing my T-shirt, and yeah, that's the best part, definitely.
I remember seeing Cheryl Miller on the cover of Sports Illustrated for the Olympics. And I was playing basketball around the same. I know. I was playing basketball around the same. I know you guys are wondering, but it's true. I wanted so badly to be Cheryl Miller, and then my Polish heritage kind of jumped in, and I stopped growing at 5'5". But it is so true because you need to have those dreams, and you need to be able to see these role models to you to know what is available to you as well. Let's open it up to some questions. Absolutely, right here in the front.
So I'm a member of the Chicago Network, and what a fabulous event. Thank you for having this, Maria and us, and very inspiring. I actually happen to believe that sports is a huge unlocking for women, not just as athletes, but to teach them to be fearless. Absolutely. You know, and both my daughters play squash in college. And I see, and I run every morning, I see tons of men and their parents adoringly teaching their boys how to do basketball or baseball. You know, every weekend. I just don't see, and I keep wondering, where are the girls? And I just feel our society could, in a generation, change the entire dynamic by teaching our girls to be rambunctious, take risks, teams, work ethic, sports, the whole thing, apart from professional sports. So my question is, and you touched upon this, it all comes down to the money, eventually. What would it take to double investment for the Sky? I was reading your 85 million valuation, 10%, couple of new women. Because with that you would get triple the marketing, triple the training and facilities. How do we make that happen? It's eminently doable.
Michael would like to know that too.
You want me to answer that question?
Sure.
Out of the box, anything.
No, I mean, honestly, the most transformative opportunity for the WNBA right now is our media contract, which is coming up in 2 years. Media rights are what, funds the majority of major sports, not just in the U.S., but around the world. It's those big TV contracts or streaming, whatever they are now. But those are, that's where the majority of the money comes from for these businesses. And, ticket sales, sponsorship are dramatically low. So, we've been way undervalued. We're in our 8th year of a 10-year contract that goes back a bit. It was actually part of the NBA deal, so we both expired at the same time. So this is a real opportunity. This is when we really need the media companies, we were saying, and corporate sponsors, but also the media companies to step up and put their money where their mouth is about diversity and really showing the value that's been created all these years from the women, the game, and the numbers. I mean, the viewership. Our viewership is way up. Our ratings are way up. Our attendance is way up. So all the metrics are really very strong and trending very strong trajectory. So this is a big effort, but that's really where the transformation. I mean, incrementally. We can bring in outside money, but outside money also ultimately wants to know that they're going to get returns on that money and that investment. So take money and then to spend it and then it's gone doesn't really build the value. So what we really need is that media rights deal in a couple of years to happen in a way that truly values the league.
Keep an eye on the NCAA women's basketball contract, which is up. And in years past, the men have always had their own basketball contract for media rights. The women's basketball was tied in with other sports. Swimming, volleyball, gymnastics, and it was a separate package, but it was grouped with all these other sports. And because of the success that women's basketball is getting right now, there is a lot of talk that they could have a record-breaking solo contract that is negotiated. So keep an eye on that, because that should have a trickle effect, hopefully, on the WNBA as well. Yeah. Yes?
You have a number of prominent women CEOs in Chicago. Have you approached their companies to talk about sponsorship? And some of those companies actually market very heavily to women. So I think that could be a fabulous opportunity, and stressing the fact that, the Sky works with teamwork. That's the most important thing. And, where are you getting it better than on that court? Teamwork is how it happens, so I think it's a natural.
I actually think we should champion men to be allies. Forget about the women.
It's both that's important. It really is
Yeah.
important to see both. It really is. Anyone else? Yes.
Rebekah, I'm curious, when you have a big online presence, how do you decide sort of what your brand is and what's, where you want to put yourself out?
I think a big part of that is, like I mentioned, like just knowing myself and what I represent and the things that I'm interested in. And yeah, you just be yourself, to be honest. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but spending 10, 11 years overseas, I've had a lot of time to really get to know myself. And so what I put out there is really genuinely who I am. And like in doing so, I hope people can relate to that. And I'm sure even if it's like one little girl, like that's enough like motivation for me to put it out there. And yeah, I just continue to do that and then hope for the best. That there's, like I said, one little girl out there that's paying attention.
Any other questions? Yes.
I have a question, and I'm going to key off of something that you said. And I played basketball as well. My father was very interested in getting me into sports. I think you're right on. But that made me then think about what research are you all doing about your other point, that you need both men and women to make this very much soar. What research are you all doing on men whose daughters are playing basketball, even if it's at the high school level or at the college level, to see if you can get interest in their sport?
I think that's a great way to go. I know at a lot of the games, we'll see Anthony Davis courtside with his daughter. Everyone knows like Kobe was really invested because of his daughter. So actually, I think that would be a great direction to go in, because yeah. So that's a great idea.
Sounds like a data science project.
It's a hashtag girl dad. Yeah, that was it. Right, DeMar
Yeah.
DeRozan as well. Yes.
Peggy, I don't know if this is a question for you, but I think one of the things that I reflect on is like when you're watching the local news and the coverage of sports in Chicago, I feel like the coverage for Sky is sometimes like, and also this happened last night. And so if, it seems to me, just from listening to the conversation, that a big piece of it is viewership. What is the role of the media in terms of providing balanced coverage for women's sports as well as men's sports to increase the awareness?
Absolutely. I feel like I've talked about this my entire career. For 30 years, this has been an issue. And it's a balance between social responsibility and who is everybody watching? Or what's a good story? Tell us a good story and we will put it on. You have to be available, though. And I think that there is I always say, when NASCAR comes to Chicago, we would laugh because we would get the top athletes. They would be available at every TV station. And then the LPGA would come to Chicago and you couldn't get an athlete for an interview. And it really, eventually the LPGA stopped coming to Chicago because we're not helping give that coverage so that people know that they're here. It's a two-way street that we're dancing. You don't want people to turn off, I'm not interested, so I have to tell you a good story why you should stick around for this story, why I'm telling you this. But at the same time, you have to sell yourself. The athletes have to be visible. They have to be out and about. They have to be doing stories. They have to... social media right now is such a great opportunity for them to spread the word, because the media landscape is going like this, and television viewership for local news is way, way down. I hate to say it. We are not the way to go in television news. radio is. That's why I'm not in television anymore. No, it's television has completely changed. When the newspapers started dedicating writers to the WNBA and to women's sports, I noticed that it really started changing things. I don't know if it was because they could afford it or they were bold enough to do it. We need women in leadership at the TV stations to also say we should be doing this. We don't have a lot of women bosses that are telling us what we should be covering. Radio, here's the other side. We have long formats. We get to talk to people for 15 minutes at a time. An athlete can show their personality. On television, you might get 30 seconds, maybe. That's really a hard sell. I always say go to the formats that are going to give you an opportunity to really sell yourself, and people will start coming. And radio is enjoying, because of podcasts, a really great comeback right now. So it is a dance that the media plays in not wanting to lose eyeballs and at the same time having a social responsibility to doing the stories that they should be doing. Anyone else? Yes.
Rebekah, do you feel like, as a player, that you have the support of women? I mean, obviously you're a pro athlete, so you have your craft, which is you're at the top of the game. But do you feel like you have the support, kind of like your board of directors, like your mentors that are outside of your professional aspect, but that can help you and surround you to help you foster your brand and reputation?
I would definitely say yes. Like, I can give Tanya as an example. She's our vice president of marketing, and she does a great job of not only helping me, but helping our whole team, like, get ourselves out there so that there can be more accessibility. I do think that other athletes, we have the support of other athletes, but we can also, you can also do a better job of maybe like spreading the word to maybe people who are outside of our circle so that there can be even more support. And by doing that also we can grow the game, investing, sponsorships, and because I think that sometimes people don't know, and the people in our circle know. So I think that we should get even other supporters from outside the circle.
So I do have original thoughts, but I wanted to ask one question off yours. It's not only where you are now, but it's what's your next chapter going to be. It's unfortunately, pro athletes' bodies can only last so long. So I think it's important to find people for now, but also who's going to help you figure out what your next chapter is, because that will be equally as important.
Definitely, and I think that's about building relationships and also about getting to know yourself along the way. And, so many people have given back to me in the game of basketball, so I definitely have ideas of how I want to give back. So you guys will see. I'm 33, so I'm already starting to think about that stuff, and people think I'm going to play until 40, but I'm not. So definitely I want to give back to the younger generation. And my dream, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Mamba Academy. I would love to do something like that in my community. So definitely starting to think about, get the wheels turning about something like that.
Any other questions? Well, let me close out by asking each of you to comment on this. What do you think the WNBA will look like in the next 10 years? Or maybe what you hope as well. And we'll start with Holly.
I would hope that the WNBA continues to provide accessibility to young girls. I remember when I was in junior high, I'm a little older than you, but my dream was to be the first woman playing in the NBA. That was not in the stars for me. But the WNBA didn't even exist then. So the fact that it exists today and it's grown to what it is, it gives me hope that there's a potential, an opportunity for it to continue to grow for the next generation of young girls.
Natasha?
I would like us to walk around with jerseys. I travel a lot around the world, and I was just in Italy last week, and everybody had 23 in Chicago. It makes me happy. You know, I'm from Chicago. But what I really want to start seeing is a light blue jersey with things like Gardner on it, right? That is important, that we're buying the merch, that we've got the fandom. I don't know about pay equity in 15, 20 years. I think we can get closer. We definitely need the media. We need to get the game on the board even more than it is. Will we ever catch up with men? I mean, we're still going in the corporate world, but let's go as far as we can on pay equity. And I think that starts with the alignment with the players, wherever we are in the world.
Mm-hmm. I just think about, again, when I was back at 8 years old and going to the Sparks games and how little audience there was. And now playing and traveling to other arenas, I see how much it's grown. So in 10 years, I see like sold out crowds and, like you said, maybe jerseys all over the world. And as we continue to spread the word, tell a friend to tell a friend, people will understand how amazing athletes and people we are, and the game will just continue to grow exponentially. So, yeah.
Rebekah Gardner, guard for the Chicago Sky. Natasha Galavotti from Grupo Bimbo, Holly Copeland from Horizon Therapeutics. We also want to thank the Chicago Sky, the Chicago Network, Horizon Therapeutics, and of course ESPN Radio 1000 for today's panel, Investing in Women's Sports. Thank you all so much for joining us.